Okay, in this module, we're going to get you started finding your investment property. And this is when it starts to really get exciting. You've got the foundations in place, and what we're going to be looking at is really how you get out there and start looking at property that meet your criteria, that have some motivations, and really start to understand the sorts of things that you're looking for. So, what are the key things about this module? We're going to identify some property, and I'm going to show you, based on criteria and based on motivation, some of the ways that you can go about identifying property with no experience at all. You can just look for property that's going to work for you. I'm going to get you looking and getting out there and visiting your local estate agents, so that you can start talking to the agents and finding out more about the properties in your area, finding out more about things that are going to work for you. We're then going to drill that down, and we're actually going to select some properties to view. We're going to pick some of the properties that are going to work for you, and we're going to go and start finding and looking at properties. We're going to get serious about investing. And then we're going to look at how you ask the right questions, how you drill down and start to find enough information so that you know whether that will work for you or not. Whether you're going to buy it, whether you're going to invest in it, whether you're going to do an option on it, it doesn't matter which way you're going to purchase it. And it doesn't even matter if you're going to purchase it. I just want you to take this seriously, so that if you were, you've at least put yourself under pressure without actually being under pressure. You've put yourself in a position to be out there looking seriously at something that you would definitely consider purchasing. I don't want you to necessarily spend any money right now. I just want you to start and get out there and do it. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're actually going to identify some properties. I want you to go online, and I want you to look using different online portals. It doesn't matter which one you use: Rightmove, Zoopla, House Ladder, Gumtree. I'd recommend that you stick with probably some of the bigger ones like Rightmove and Zoopla. I want you to find 10 properties that you could seriously view, 10 properties that you feel can work for you. Now, how do you get started with that? Well, one of the best things to do, in my experience, is to look at a couple of different things that work for you. So you can look at the criteria of the property and whether that works for you. And you can also look at the motivation or potential motivation of the seller. So what do I mean by all of that? So firstly, if you're looking for maybe a buy-to-let property where you may be looking for 2 or 3 bedrooms and you just want to let it to a family and rent it out, then you might be looking specifically at something like the number of rooms that it has. It might be the price range or the return on investment that you're going to get from that. It could be quite essential that you get it in the right location. You might be concerned about the location that you want. You've perhaps done your research and you're very specific about where you want to buy. So you could go and have a little look on, let's say, Rightmove, and identify your properties based on that. You can put very specific criteria into the search and pick properties that meet your criteria. The other way that you could do it is you could look for some simple things that make the seller of the property more motivated. And you can, if you want to, combine that with criteria. But first of all, you might just want to start off by looking at motivation. One of the great ways to find motivation, very often, and not always, but a great way to find motivation is with an empty property. And very often with empty properties, obviously no one lives in them. So the seller who used to either live in it or rent it out, whatever their circumstances were, they've clearly moved on. And so this empty property is, in most cases, costing them money. And it might be costing them money if they've got a mortgage on it. If they haven't got a mortgage on it, it might be costing them money through council tax. It used to be that you could get 6 months free council tax if your property was empty. That is generally, as a rule of thumb, and not in every place, but in a lot of areas now, that has been done away with. And therefore, I'd encourage you to look at your local council website and see what the rules are on empty properties for council tax. Because if you're in an area where someone's starting to pay council tax after a month, or maybe immediately they're starting to pay council tax, then there's a strong possibility that that person could be motivated because it's costing them money just sitting there empty. It might be that the property requires work and therefore the individual who owns it maybe doesn't have the money to do it, and therefore they want to sell it and move it on and get rid of the cost, get rid of whether it's empty or not empty, just get rid of the headache that for them is sitting around and not being able to move on in their lives as a result of having something that requires work that they perhaps either can't fund or don't have the ability to do either themselves or through someone else. It could be that there's poor health and they're not able to do the property up. Another way to look for a motivation is where there's perhaps property on with more than one agent. If someone's advertising with more than one agent, it generally means that they're more motivated to get it off the market. They're looking for a reason to get it sold. You might not understand what the reason is, but if they're advertising with two agents, there's a keenness about them to sell. Another indicator is on properties that are up for sale and for let. Now, it's not a definite indicator that there's a motivation, but clearly the seller or landlord of that property wants a solution because they want an either or. And if you're looking at perhaps an option opportunity, then properties that are up for sale or for let with a lease option where you might lease the property first and then buy it in the future, something that's for sale and for let can very often work. In addition to that, properties that are empty work very well on that. Because if the property's empty and it's costing the owner money, they may not actually have to sell, but they might want to get rid of the monthly cost. And that's potentially a solution that you could offer them. If it's something that requires work, it might be the ability to motivate a better price. So they may be keener to sell and therefore you might be able to chip away at the price and get something that works really well for you. Now, when you're looking for property online, you might want to combine those two together. So one of the things that I would recommend that you do is that, let's say you go to Rightmove and you have a particular area that you're looking in. You can put your area in. I would encourage you to use postcode. So you might look in the first 3 digits of your postcode. So if I was looking in an area that was good for me, I'd be looking in something like CW2 and doing a search in that area. Now, what I might be looking for is I might want to have properties that are at least 3 bedrooms. So I might put some specific criteria in there. My criteria might be 3 bedrooms as a minimum. I don't necessarily need to have a price range at this stage. I might want to just leave that blank because I might not worry about the price. I'm going to sort it by lowest price probably so that I can look at lowest price first. But if you are interested in a particular price range, you might put that price range in. Then you can have a little look and see, using the pictures, just flick through the properties from start to finish, just click into them, have a little look at the pictures to see whether they're empty or not. Have a little look down the page to see if there's properties that are on with 2 agents. Now it's a little bit more difficult to see if they're up for sale and for let because they're on a different system. One's on the for sale side and one's on the let side. But you can go then and have a look at the for let and to let boards on Rightmove or on Zoopla to see what's up for rent. Certainly starting off with identifying 10 properties that you could seriously view that would meet your criteria and potentially have a motivation from the seller's perspective would be a really good place to start in order for you to narrow down to do some viewings. So that's the first stage, is doing online. And then what we want you to do is I want you to get out there and start to speak to your local agent. Now, you're not necessarily going to go into the agent and just tell them that you've got these 10 properties that you want to go and view. I want you to find out more information about these 10 properties, but I also want you to see if they've got anything else that might meet your criteria. Anything else that might have some motivation behind it. Something that meets your strategy. If you're looking to do properties up, then clearly you want to find something that needs a bit of work. So take along the properties you've identified, go and visit the estate agents in your area, particularly the ones that have the properties that you've identified on the market. If you're nervous about talking to estate agents and you're not really sure what sort of questions you might ask and what to say, then you can always pick another area, and if you prefer, practice in that area. It's going to create some extra work for you, but if this is the first time you've done this and you feel a bit nervous about it, then go somewhere that it's not going to matter. Just take the pressure off yourself. To be fair, what I'm asking you to do here shouldn't be putting you under any pressure, because I'm not asking you to go and buy these properties. I'm just asking you to find something that might be of interest to you. So what you want to do is you want to find out if they've got any other properties that might meet your criteria. And I'd encourage you to ask them some questions. So get them to get you a set of particulars on the properties that you've found, and just ask them a few questions about the property. Tell them to ask them to tell you about it and give you some more information about it. How long's it been on the market? Have they had any interest in it? Does it need any work that's not particularly obvious? Now, sometimes the people that you speak to might not have been to see the property, and therefore they might not know that much detail. But you could establish a little bit, if possible, about the seller's circumstances. If they're not that familiar with the property, they might not be able to tell you much about the seller's circumstances. Therefore, don't prod too hard. Just ask them a few questions. And what I want you to do is I want you to take that information away once they've given you some more, because they'll pull out lots of particulars. They'll probably want to have your details so you can share your contact information with them, and they'll put you on their system so that they can start sending you more information. Now, it's up to you whether you choose to give them your information or not. I'd encourage you, if you're starting out, to start getting information on your local area and what's available in the area, whether you're going to buy using estate agents or not. It'll really start to help you see what sort of market price, what's selling, what's not, what's available, and what might be available at a good price. Once you have done that, I'd like you to establish 6 properties that you would genuinely and seriously like to view. And when I say genuinely and seriously, what I mean by that is whether you have got the money in the bank to buy or not, whether you're going to do lease options or whether you're going to buy and sell and refurbish properties, I want you to pick properties that you could seriously consider if you had the money to go and buy them. And therefore, look through the details. Have a look at the opportunity. Identify with some of the motivations, identify with some of the criteria to see whether it meets your criteria. If you're going to multi-let a property, does the floor plan allow you to create extra rooms so that you can do more of a room share, so that you can get at least 5 bedrooms, 5 lettable rooms? If you're going to renovate property, is there enough in it for you to renovate? Do you want to do lots of work? Do you just want to do a little bit of work? What sort of criteria do you want? This will really help you narrow this down so that more and more you can start to see exactly what you're looking for, and you can very quickly in the future start to rule in and rule out properties that you want to progress. And it will save you a lot of time in the future if you can really start to seriously consider these initial properties that you go and see and think about why you would or wouldn't buy them. I want you to take them and do some research on them. Have a little look at the values of property in your area. Have a little look to see whether it makes sense if you were going to buy that property at that price. Look at the previous sold prices. So have a little look on net house prices to see what other properties have sold for in the area. Rightmove have a little tab on house prices at the top. So there's a for sale, there's a to rent, and there's a house price tab. And you can put the postcode of the area in, and you can select different criteria to get property that work for that give you a comparable for that particular property. Zoopla also have comparable opportunities. So you can put the information of your property in and see what other comparables there are to see whether it's being asked a realistic price. If you're going to let the property out, have a look and see what it would rent for. Does it give you sufficient return? So do your full research on the property before you go and see it. Once you've done your research, you can really start to establish the 6 best properties for you to see. Now, you can go and see more of them. 6 is not the minimum number or the maximum number. I'm just trying to give you a target to aim for, so that you at least go and see 6, because what you'll establish and what you'll discover is that what you see online and what the estate agents tell you are not always exactly what it is when you go and see it. Because online, the pictures very often are really good. And then you get there and you think, is this the same property? Sometimes the agent will tell you it's a really nice property, and you get there and you think, it's not quite as nice as what it was described as. And that's because, don't forget, they're trying to sell you something. So they're not going to tell you that it's a complete disaster of a property. Now, they're not necessarily going to lie to you, but they're certainly going to make the picture look a bit glossier than it might be in reality. And it's the same with the pictures online and with the descriptions online. They don't always absolutely match up with what the reality is. And that's why I really want you to get out there and I want you to go and see at least 6 properties. Because not only will that help you establish your criteria better, but it will also help you see that the reality of property is that what you get a picture of from the estate agent or online, or if you're dealing with sellers in the future directly, the things that they tell you about the property, you'll start to establish that their vision and through their eyes is much rosier than sometimes the reality is. And therefore, you have to start to pull the picture together so that you can really discover what's all the information that you need to know in order to make your decision to purchase, or in order to make your decision to do a lease option or an exchange with a delayed completion, or whatever way you're actually going to invest in that property. Being able to establish all that information before you get there will help you understand what sort of questions that you need to ask to be able to make your decision in the end. So how do you get to that point? You need to think about what it is that you still need to know. If you're going to ask some questions, which I'd highly encourage you to do, then what sort of questions do you need to ask? What's missing? What don't you understand about the property? Does it need any work? Is there a rough cost of work? Has the agent already had somebody interested that's worked all of that out? Could you ask them that question? Rather than thinking that you have to get your builder straight there, perhaps they've already had somebody round, someone that was interested, and they can give you a rough idea. Now again, don't forget they're selling you the property, so they might make it sound better than it really is. But if you don't ask the question, then you certainly won't know. Consider, have they had any other offers? How long has it been on the market, and have they actually had anyone that's offered? So if there was some of the motivations in there, where the property's empty or the seller's advertising with 2 agents, and they've had very few people viewing and they've had no offers, is there a possibility that you could come in with a much lower offer or a different proposition, something a little bit more creative? Has the seller found another property to move to if it's not empty? If they haven't found something yet, then you could end up in quite a lengthy chain. Or maybe they don't actually need to sell to move on. They maybe just don't want to take on 2 bills, and therefore they're not moving until they've sold. Understanding what sort of questions you need to ask, what sort of questions are going to help you fill the gap, is really important to help you build a picture of whether you might invest in something or might not invest. Too often people get to the solution of, I'm going to buy it, I'm going to guess at the price, I'm going to put an offer forward and I'm going to be creative with it, I'm going to try and tell them I want to rent it first and then buy it later, and it might not actually suit the scenario. It might not suit the situation. So the more questions that you can ask, the more you can establish not only will it work for you, but you can also try to establish, will it work for the seller? So if you were in a position to buy, or you were in a position to invest, whichever way you're going to invest, you need to know what's going to help you make your decision. Don't be afraid to ask questions. You're making investments for the long term. You don't want to make investments for the long term and have been too shy to ask the questions in the short term. So by making yourself a list of questions before you even go to the viewing, think about some of the things that you want to ask. In the beginning, you might not feel brave enough. So the first time that you go and do viewings, you might not feel brave enough to do it. But the more that you go out and the more that you view and the more that you see and the more people that you meet, the more questions you'll start to feel comfortable to ask. And if you're dealing with estate agents, don't forget they're just doing a day job. And some of them are very passionate about their job and some of them are less passionate. But ultimately, they're there to sell property. And therefore, they don't mind if you ask the questions. They might not be able to answer it. The one thing that you can do by dealing with estate agents is that you can do this without it costing you any money. The only thing it's costing you is time. So by going out and seeing properties and viewing them through agents, you're really getting to explore what's in the marketplace. And if you're new to it or you've been doing it for a while and you've got maybe either stuck in a rut or you're coming back to it and you're really just starting to find your feet again, just get out there and start doing this, because that'll really help you establish a way forward. And then you can start to consider the offers that you can put forward and understand why you might or might not invest in something. It can help you narrow down your criteria so that you know exactly what it is you're looking for. Now, you might not get to that point just after 6 viewings, but you're certainly going to make some way forward with it. You're going to be in a position where you have looked at some properties really seriously as if you're going to invest. And you don't have to put offers forward on these ones. But the one thing that I would ask you to think about when you have seen them is, what do you still need to know to make that decision? And if you've still got questions after you've been to see it, follow it up. Phone the agent the next day. Get your questions answered. It doesn't matter whether you're going to offer or not. Just ask the question anyway, because that's going to build your confidence and it's going to help you understand where the gaps are and what sort of questions you can ask in the future. It's going to make you feel so much more confident about investing. It's going to make you feel more confident about whether you've got your criteria right. It's going to make you feel more confident about understanding different motivations of people. And it's going to help you understand your position in terms of buying or doing something slightly more creative. But ultimately, getting started and really starting to get out there and narrow down what's going to work for you and what doesn't, that's where you need to begin. The next stage from there is going to move you on to opening up the doors to moving outside of agents and moving outside of the traditional market and maybe starting to market for your own properties and trying to find sellers directly or landlords directly. And we cover that in other modules. So this is really just to get you started finding your investment properties and really get you moving so that you understand exactly what you're looking for. You can start to look at some of the questions that you're going to ask, and you can build your confidence with your area and with the people that are operating in your area. And you're also building contacts at the same time. So what are the 3 things that I want you to do from this module? I want you to identify 10 properties. Look online and find 10 properties based on criteria and motivation that you could view. It's only going to take you about 20-30 minutes probably to find those. In the beginning, it may take you longer. How long would it take you to find 10 empty properties and then go back through them and see if they meet your criteria, if they have enough bedrooms, if they've got the right floor plan? And if they haven't, you can go and find another 10 empty properties. I want you to take those and I want you to visit at least 4 to 5 estate agents. Get out there and start meeting the people that are selling properties in the area. Start understanding more about not just the individual properties, but also about the area. When you visit the agents, take along your 10 properties, but also find out what else they've got. They might have things that you didn't pick up online, opportunities that are staring you right in the face, but you didn't see it. Then I want you to get out there and I want you to view at least 6 properties. Take the time to think about it. Don't just book the appointments when you're in the agents. Even if it's just going for a coffee, taking all the details and narrowing it down after you've been for a coffee. I want you to view those 6 properties, and there's 2 things that you need to be doing when you're viewing the 6 properties. One is asking the right questions. And when I say asking the right questions, those are the questions that fill the gaps for you. There is no right or wrong answer with exactly what question you ask, only the ones that give you the answers to whether you would invest in that property or not. And the second thing that you need to do is you need to open your eyes and look around the property. Have a look at what's in front of you, because it won't match up necessarily to the description or the pictures or to how it was described to you. So look at the visible signs around the property to see whether there's anything that wasn't particularly obvious when you looked at the pictures when it was described to you. What sort of work needs doing? Are there any cracks that might concern you? Look inside and outside. Look up and down. Don't just look straight ahead of you. When you're viewing properties, it's really important to, right from the beginning of the property, before you even enter it, look up at the roof, at the chimney stacks. Look down at the ground to see if there's anything between the ground and the property itself that might concern you, any cracks or any connection, dampness that's creeping up to the walls. And then the same when you go inside the property. Look floor to ceiling in every room and make sure that you give it a good once over with your eyes. Now, you're not experienced necessarily right now if you're new to this. If you are, don't forget the basics. If you've done this before, have a good look around, and then if you've got questions, you know who to ask. You ask your agent. Find out if there's something that you're not sure about. Ask them what it is. If they don't know, you can take that away and you can ask people that you start to build into your team. You can get more information. You can find out who do you need to get in your team so that you can get those questions answered. So view at least 6 properties so that you can really start to get familiar with what's going to work for you. You can really start to get familiar with the questions that you ask, and you can get very familiar with what you need to be looking for in and around the property when you go to view it, to make sure that you don't end up investing in something that you shouldn't have invested in, something that you could have avoided. So by getting out there and getting started, you're really going to start to make some inroads to your investment journey so that you understand exactly what you're looking for. You can start to look at some of the questions that you're going to ask, and you can build your confidence with your area and with the people that are operating in your area. And you're also building contacts at the same time. So what are the 3 things that I want you to do from this module? I want you to identify 10 properties. Look online and find 10 properties based on criteria and motivation that you could view. It's only going to take you about 20-30 minutes probably to find those. In the beginning it may take you longer. How long would it take you to find 10 empty properties and then go back through them and see if they meet your criteria, if they have enough bedrooms, if they've got the right floor plan? And if they haven't, you can go and find another 10 empty properties. I want you to take those and I want you to visit at least 4 to 5 estate agents. Get out there and start meeting the people that are selling properties in the area. Start understanding more about not just the individual properties, but also about the area. When you visit the agents, take along your 10 properties, but also find out what else they've got. They might have things that you didn't pick up online, opportunities that are staring you right in the face, but you didn't see it. Then I want you to get out there and I want you to view at least 6 properties. Take the time to think about it. Don't just book the appointments when you're in the agents. Even if it's just going for a coffee, taking all the details and narrowing it down after you've been for a coffee. I want you to view those 6 properties, and there's 2 things that you need to be doing when you're viewing the 6 properties. One is asking the right questions. And when I say asking the right questions, those are the questions that fill the gaps for you. There is no right or wrong answer with exactly what question you ask, only the ones that give you the answers to whether you would invest in that property or not. And the second thing that you need to do is you need to open your eyes and look around the property. Have a look at what's in front of you, because it won't match up necessarily to the description or the pictures or to how it was described to you. So look at the visible signs around the property to see whether there's anything that wasn't particularly obvious when you looked at the pictures when it was described to you. What sort of work needs doing? Are there any cracks that might concern you? Look inside and outside. Look up and down. Don't just look straight ahead of you. When you're viewing properties, it's really important to, right from the beginning of the property, before you even enter it, look up at the roof, at the chimney stacks. Look down at the ground to see if there's anything between the ground and the property itself that might concern you, any cracks or any connection, dampness that's creeping up to the walls. And then the same when you go inside the property. Look floor to ceiling in every room and make sure that you give it a good once over with your eyes. Now, you're not experienced necessarily right now if you're new to this. If you are, don't forget the basics. If you've done this before, have a good look around, and then if you've got questions, you know who to ask. You ask your agent. Find out if there's something that you're not sure about. Ask them what it is. If they don't know, you can take that away and you can ask people that you start to build into your team. You can get more information. You can find out who do you need to get in your team so that you can get those questions answered. So view at least 6 properties so that you can really start to get familiar with what's going to work for you. You can really start to get familiar with the questions that you ask, and you can get very familiar with what you need to be looking for in and around the property when you go to view it, to make sure that you don't end up investing in something that you shouldn't have invested in, something that you could have avoided. So by getting out there and getting started, you're really going to start to make some inroads to your investment journey. And I hope that from this module, that's going to take you forward to build your confidence and find the criteria and make sure that you can really start to narrow down what it is you're looking for and where you're looking for it. And you can build some relationships along the way. So good luck with that. And I look forward to speaking to you in another module with the Property Mentor.